Hey everyone, this is the Real Hadeel podcast, and today we have Danielle, and she is an author, a TEDx speaker, as well as an anthropologist. And Danielle's going to tell us a little bit more about her book that she actually released called Dear Self, I Love You, Keep Going. And Danielle, tell us a little bit more about why did you write that book?
Thanks. I wrote the book because I was going through a really difficult time in life. I know a lot of our viewers have probably been through a divorce and have an idea of how painful that is. If you've never been through that, I sincerely hope that you never do have to go through that. When I started writing the book, I didn't actually know I was writing a book. The very first entry of the book was written because I had a crazy life moment. It was one of those times when I was having a really bad day, and in my bedroom I have this full-length mirror, and I walked past that mirror, and as I was walking past it, even though I knew I was having a terrible day and I was so heartbroken inside, I noticed that I had this sparkle in my eyes, and I started walking towards that mirror and just seeing that liveliness and that life and knowing that there was so much more of me inside than what I was experiencing in the moment. I just started talking to myself, like totally insane. But I started talking to myself and telling myself how much I loved myself and how proud I was of myself, of how I was handling life during that really difficult time. And after I said a few things to myself, I thought, you know what, that felt so good. And I never want to forget that moment because I know that there are a lot of really hard moments ahead of me. So I decided that I was going to write down what I'd said to myself and post it on Facebook, because Facebook is sort of like my public journal in a way. I like to tell people what I'm up to, what I'm thinking, and I like to learn about other people that way. So I posted those loving words to myself on my Facebook page, and people just loved it. I had a friend all the way in Arizona, I live in the Washington, D.C. area, all the way in Arizona say, can I print this out and put it on my mirror in my bathroom? And I was like, yes, of course. And when you're having a really hard time in life and you offer something, whether knowingly or unknowingly, that makes other people happy, you grab onto that. And so I loved the way that it made me feel to have written something that made somebody else feel good about themselves. And so I casually thought, well, I'll write another one tomorrow. And so I did. And that felt good. People loved it. And I wrote another one. And it wasn't until like 3 months into the project that the light bulb sort of went off, and I went, hey, I wrote these every day for a year, I'd have a book. I could put them together in a book. I've always wanted to be an author my whole life. That's been sort of a secret dream of mine, but something I never pursued. And so I just decided, okay, I'm going to write one of these little notes to myself every day for a year. And I think what makes my book different than a lot of books out there where people give life advice, or people do things like Notes from the Universe, the Tut thing, Mike Dooley, or other sorts of things like that, is I was truly writing to me, and I was writing about my experience, but I was sharing with people because it was sort of that public journal venue. So at the end of this year, I had this amazing book. I had the process that I'd gone through sort of written out for people to see how you go from being traumatized and hoping that things are going to be okay to being in that place of, okay, I'm really muscling through and trying to convince myself, to finding hope that maybe it really will be okay, and in the end feeling like, I made it, I'm a rock star, I can do this.
No, I mean, I love it. So I really liked how you're talking about the fact that you created this process for yourself and you took all these notes, which is fantastic. Most people, when they're going through a traumatic situation, it's like they just take it in. I know, I personally, talking for myself, whenever I go through something very bad, like a bad situation, I usually just ignore it and just try to go on and move on forward. It's like, just keep staying positive. But what you did was so different. You actually said, you know what, hey, I feel this way, I'm going to write about it, I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to be vulnerable, and then along the process, keep writing myself something different each day. It's phenomenal that you're doing that, because most people would think, oh, I have to hide my emotions, I have to be this strong person, no one needs to know about me, right? No one needs to know what I'm feeling, because if I show those, if I let those guards down, I might hurt someone, or maybe I might be putting more stress on somebody else. I like the fact that you you took the time and you're like, no, you know what, this is helping me, and I'm sure it's going to help someone else too. And you made the book out of it.
You highlighted something that I have this huge beef with, and that's, we have this idea in our culture right now of we need to be positive all the time.
Right.
And I call sort of my way of living a positivity practice. I absolutely am on board with a positivity practice, but I think where this has gone wrong is that you fake it till you make it with your attitude, but you need to allow real emotions.
Right.
And the fact that we're not encouraging or allowing people to feel their emotions or share them, and instead we're supposed to put a happy face on it, is leading to so much isolation and loneliness and people feeling like they're totally disconnected from one another. Because if you start to share with somebody that how you're really feeling, I don't know if you've seen the Brene Brown clip on vulnerability, but it shows how somebody will say, well, at least this, or they will discount what you're saying. Well, you know, it could be worse, or things like that. And so
it's almost like, well, you know, there's other people out there who are going through worse.
Exactly. Or look at the bright side. And what people are really seeking when they open up about how they're feeling is for something to acknowledge. They're not saying, fix it for me. They're not saying, I'm going to be like this forever. Most people are not wanting to wallow in their pain. They're just wanting somebody to be there and to listen and to say, I get that this is hard for you. And then to just zip it and not try to fix it, so that they feel like they're not alone. And that, being able to share authentically and genuinely what we're feeling, allows us to then shift into that space of, okay, now I'm in control. What kind of attitude do I want to have about this? So you fake your attitude, you have the positive attitude, but you have got to be able to share how you're really feeling.
You have to feel it. You have to, that's something that I had a hard time learning growing up, because I was like, I'm always like this Miss Little Perfect, goody two-shoes, like, you know, just had to, always everything that's ever bothered me or anything, just don't show it, you know, you have to keep a face. And in reality, that hurt a lot, because I didn't realize that I had built up all these emotions. I didn't realize I was angry all the time until like my siblings or someone close to me was like, you know, hey, you know, you need to calm down. And to me, I was like, well, I am calm, you know, and in reality, I wasn't, you know, I would show my feelings in different situations, right? If that makes any sense. I would like release all the stress I was feeling or anything in different things that shouldn't have been reacted in that way.
Right.
But that was the only way for me to let it out, and even maybe sometimes the person didn't deserve it, you know, and that
exactly
sucks.
You used the exact right word. You were basically in a reactive space. You were feeling like you had all these buttons on you, and then somebody pushed one and it just exploded. And you're like, whereas you were sort of walking around thinking, I don't have any buttons, I'm calm and perfectly fine, but you were actually just covered in all these triggers. And then somebody would hit you the wrong way, and you were reactive rather than responsive. And responsive is when we have time and we're focused and centered enough to go, how would I choose to respond to this out of being the person I want to be, rather than just like exploding on someone.
Just letting it all out. No, I mean, I agree 100%. And something you also you talked about a little bit, which I liked, is like you said you have to be aware of the weaknesses you have, you know, and that's very important, because most people think, oh, if I just ignore it, it will never come up. But in reality, it's funny the way the world works. You're always going to be tested, and the things that you ignore the most will be tested. You will be tested the most on.
Yes. And
someone once told me, if you know your weaknesses, you become very powerful, because now you know how to shield yourself when it happens, or you know how to handle it when it occurs. You're like, okay, I know I have a weakness of getting a little too sensitive over something, let's just say. Then at least you're aware of that, so when something happens, you're like, okay, I'm about to get really sensitive, so what do I need to do right now to not react so poorly? You know, what do I need to do right now to move forward?
Right.
I wanted to ask you, like, how, now that you identified all the problems you were going through when you were writing the book and you were going through that process, what were the next steps you took after you put it on paper and you wrote it all down? What were the next steps you took to kind of, say, all right, well, you know what, this is really a sucky moment, and all that's happening, I went through this divorce, everything really sucks. Okay, now you've experienced, you felt it, what next?
So the next thing for me was to just celebrate having made it, right? And to take stock of who I had become through that process. And it was so interesting because one of the things I had become was somebody who lived a dream, right? I became an author because of the most horrid experience in my life. I became somebody who knew how to go out and make friends because my whole life had been wrapped up in my marriage. I really didn't have very many friends. So one of the things I had done was realize that I was really lonely and to figure out how to go out there and meet people and make friends. I had also become somebody who could share what they were going through in a way that was powerful and positive and showcased that I am working with this, not that I am being overcome with this. This is what I'm dealing with, not this is what is victimizing me, right?
You're not taking yourself too seriously. You're kind of like, this is what's going on right now, but this is not me.
Right. So having written all that stuff down, it made me think about, you know, what do I want to become next? Like, what do I want to do with myself? And really, it's just been repeating that practice of developing myself in ways that are taking me towards being the woman that I want to be. And whether that's, you know, a meditation practice or doing yoga all the time, I just started running. It really got me present to when you're going through grief and a hard time, it's sort of like a free pass to do whatever you want. Because people recognize that you're having a hard time. And so I really used that time to just start trying things that I never would have tried before, that didn't mesh with my identity or who people thought I was, and to just free myself to, you know, do whatever I wanted to do with my time. And that really was helpful once I got out of the grief period to go, okay, and now I've experienced all these things. How do I want to live my life, and how do I want to incorporate doing more of the things that bring me joy so that I am the person that I want to be in my day-to-day.
Like, what are the most purposeful things you want to do now?
Yeah.
I totally understand that. It's funny you say that because I see people who've gone through really bad, horrible situations very early on in their life. And then I see people who go through when they're 40 or 50 or sometimes in the middle. And it's interesting to see that because I always wonder, like, why is this? Sometimes I'll ask myself, why is this happening to me right now? You know, I'm in my 20s. Like, why is this happening to me right now compared to, oh well, this girl, she has a free pass, and you know, she's living her 20s so great. And sometimes you said something very important. You can't victimize yourself.
Right.
Sometimes you have to realize, like, and be very aware that whatever the universe is throwing at you is for a purpose. You know, maybe you're meant to have this now because later you need to serve others who are going through the same thing, and you are the best person to serve those people. Let's just say, or whatever. Maybe there's a deeper and a larger reason as to why certain things happen to you. And when you figure out, when you go through that, when you have that freebie pass, you know, where you go through all those things and you're like, let me just find my way, it's okay to feel that way. I think a lot of people, I don't know, I'm speaking for myself at least, sometimes I would be like, well, I can't be like this, I have to you know, be calm and I have to do everything the right way. But in reality, it's okay to not take yourself so seriously. It's okay to go out there and get lost a little, whatever it may be, to find your way, you know. And I love that you definitely, you vouch that, you show that, and that's something you went through. That's fascinating.
I love that quote that says, not all who wander are lost. And I think that there are some of us who are very driven, especially women who are very driven and very much wanting to get it right. It's scary to think about wandering, to get off the path and just see what's out there, because there's that fear of, if I do this, am I going to end up totally in the other direction? And then am I going to have to recover that ground to get back on track? And I think it's worth exploring, you know, what's a little to the right and left of you, so that you can decide, is the path that I thought I was on and that I was committed to really the one that I want to go through?
It's very important, because if you don't go through that, you're always going to say what if, and you're always going to wonder what's on the other side. When in reality, you should really be certain that the side you're on is the side that you want to be, and it's actually taking you somewhere far. And sometimes, and it's funny, a lot of people get worried, and you know, sometimes I'm like very like protective over my little sister, or you know, or my brothers, and I'm like, you know what, it's okay, it's their life, let them. I actually like will say, like, you know what, if you want to go to that thing, go ahead. I was like, just be aware of what could happen, and be ready for it when it does happen, and you make the decision if you want to go forward with it or not. I'm not saying anything, you know, it's your life, right? But it's nice to have that, to give people that room. When I've realized, when you give people that room, or you give yourself that room, you make better decisions at the end of the day. Because you're not like, almost like the ego gets in the way. It's like, well, she said not to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway because I know I can do better, right? So I love that.
Going through challenges, whether they're ones that we choose for ourselves to challenge ourselves or things that it seems like life just threw at us out of nowhere, what they really do for us is they build strength. They build the ability to be resilient and to do things that we never could have done before. It's like, it's not weakness to be tired from having done a workout, right? It's exhaustion. You did what you could do. Right. And I think we need to think about that more with the trials that we have in life, that it's one, okay to be challenged. It's two, okay to be tired. And three, that is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you gave it all you had and you need to take a rest so that you can have the benefit of your body or your emotions or your thoughts or your mind growing and integrating that new strength.
Exactly. And when you get to that new strength, now you can take even a larger challenge. And And it's like, okay, now a whole new thing, and you're feeling the same. It's funny, you feel the same way every time you take on something.
Every time. Yes.
It's like no matter what, it's funny because most people are like, oh, this challenge is going to be worse. But in reality, you reacted the same way you reacted to the other challenges. The only difference is now you're stronger and you're prepared for this new level of this challenge, whatever it may be. And when you look at it like that, it's like, oh, okay, it's not so bad. I know I'm going to feel exhausted now. I know me starting this business, as a marketing agency, I know that this is going to, it's funny, it's like the whole clientele you get. Sometimes you have a client that's only paying you this amount of money, like maybe $500 a month, and then you have a client who's paying you $10,000 a month, let's just say. It's the same work. You're doing the same thing. Yeah. The only difference is that one is testing you in a different way, and the other one's doing it this way. But in the reality, the work is the same. The blueprint is the same. The process is everything. It's just now, are you up for this next challenge? Right. From what you've learned from this, can you take on this one? It's funny.
It's awesome because at some point you reach that level of mastery, right? There's that quote out there that says takes 10,000 hours to get to mastery. I don't know how many life challenges it takes, but I have had a few moments where life has now brought me a challenge, and there's this old movie called The Matrix where Neo is in the Matrix and something's about to come at him and he just waves it on. And I've had that feeling in life now because I've had so many challenges that I'm like, bring it. I've got this. I'm going to do this.
We got this.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful feeling to feel like I trained for this.
Right.
I can do this.
Right. I love it. I love it a lot because it's so true. Because when you gotten a taste of it, now you took a really big bite of it. It's like, okay, you know what? Bring more food. I'm ready. Yeah. I'm ready to eat. I'm ready for that. I got room for that right here.
Yes.
No, I love it that you do that. It's fascinating because not many women out there have gotten that type of mindset, power, and realization that they can take on this. It shows how strong women can be. It's as much as people think, oh, men rule this world. In reality, there's a lot of women out there that are very powerful. And when you've learned to master it, you've learned to master your mind,
mastering yourself,
your emotions.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You can master anybody. You can master anything else. It really, it's true. It's like once you defeated the hardest competitor, and that is your hardest enemy almost. It's like yourself. Yeah. If you can accomplish that and get to that point, oh my God, everything else is like a piece of cake because you're defenseless. I mean, no one can attack you at that point. Yeah. You know exactly how to handle yourself.
Yeah.
I love it. Now, tell me a little bit more about, I know you're doing the book, did the TEDx talk, so tell us a little bit more of the talk. What did you talk about specifically?
So my talk was about how everyone has skills and knowledge that could be used in unconventional ways. The short version of that is we all have a skill set, and by taking it out of the place in which we've been using it and moving it into a different context, sometimes we can create something completely new, or at least have a new interest in something that maybe became old and boring for us. So my academic background is in anthropology and archaeology, and as you can see, I'm kind of a girly girl, and I don't really like dirt. But what I did in my career is I actually took 3 very basic principles of archaeology. They're available to anyone reading a beginning archaeology textbook. And I took those principles of excavation and I moved them over to digging through women's handbags. So instead of digging through dirt and looking for artifacts that are hundreds or thousands of years old, I took that skill set and I started looking through women's handbags for what they carry with them, and then extrapolating information about what that meant about who they are as a person, what they believe about the world. What you collect in your life, whether it's in your handbag, in your car, the clothes you wear, the words you say, the friends you hang out with, all of it is an indicator of your internal culture and your internal knowledge and your internal experience of the world. And so I just took that and made a business out of it, and that ended up being a concept that needed to be shared, because there are so many people who have a skill set that they either don't want to use, don't know how to use, or they've lost their sense of purpose and enthusiasm with it, and they want to start something else, whether they want to become an entrepreneur, they want to change careers, and they feel like, well, I'm starting all over. Everything I know is not valid over here. And what I was saying is that you can take what you know and you have developed at a very high level, and you can move it into a new context, and that might create an amazing business opportunity for you. It might create an amazing brand, an amazing niche, or it just might allow you to bring value to a different kind of business atmosphere.
So all that through a purse.
Yes.
And like a man's wallet. I was fascinated when you told me that. I was like, what? I don't get it. And I made you do it to me, because I was like, okay, so what do you think about me? Like, look through my purse, or look through this, and you literally just like analyzed certain things, and you said one thing that made so much sense, because I told you, I have this watch, because you said, oh, I looked through the purse, and I was like, I don't know if you're gonna be able to read me very well, because everything I have in that purse, it really was just given to me. I just used it because it was given to me.
Right.
And you immediately was like, oh, you're what was it, dumpster girl? Or,
when I developed this purse thing, I ended up giving it a fun name called the Purse Process, and I developed 4 personality archetypes or profiles, and they have cute names like Dumpster Debbie and Vanishing Veronica. The other 2 are Absent Abigail and Perfect Priscilla. And so I developed those because I looked through zillions of purses, and I found that there were patterns, that women who had certain types of things fell into certain behavioral patterns. Right. And when I was first doing this, everyone thought that I was just sort of some weird purse psychic. And what I was trying to show by developing the archetypes, just like we can tell by looking through a collection of things we find in the earth, what culture it belonged to, what time period, what people, all of those things, I can tell by looking at what a woman has, what sort of belief system she falls into, how she values herself, what she believes about the world. And so by developing these archetypes, it allowed people to see what I was seeing, rather than it just looking like I was pulling it out of thin air. When you organize information so that people can self-identify, that's what really made the purse process pop, and what made people really excited. Right. And to think that, oh my gosh, she really did take a very conventional, masculine, dirty skill set and made it feminine. And this is incredibly legitimate because it's based on something that we use all the time.
No, I love it a lot, because it's funny, because people can figure that out on their own. They really can. What you're doing is not something that's hard to do on your own. But, I mean, not to discount anything.
No.
But you did something very important, because most people are not aware of who they are. They're just not aware of their weakness. They're not aware of a lot of things. They're not aware of their surroundings. They're not aware of how they feel, how they react. Usually that's why they go to therapists or life coaches or anything to help them figure that out, right? And you just did that through looking at the purses. Like, for me, for example, I always knew in the back of my mind, I was very, I used to take on problems, I used to take on people's emotions, but I never really, said that to myself, or made myself realize that, internally. And when you just looked at myself, we're like, oh, well, you're wearing this, it's a gift, this is a gift, you don't really like it. Obviously, naturally for you, it was like, it makes sense, you're a dumpster Debbie, You just take on people's problems, you want to make them feel good, this is how, and I was like, well, dang, she really read me that quick.
Well, and what I love about it is that, like you said, people don't have this awareness. And there's something about the way that I offer the awareness that really just sinks in with people. I will meet people years later who are like, you said this to me, and it changed my life. Because it changed the way they thought about themselves, which means they changed the way that they behaved.
Right.
It's an instantaneous change. It's not like, oh, now I need to practice boundaries, or now I need to, go read this book that tells me how to do this. They just instantly know, this is how I behave. And then they get conscious of, this is how I want to behave, and they just make the change. They just, from now on, they do things differently. And I love the immediacy and the instantaneousness of that. It's like a instant gratification breakthrough. Yes,
it's a good feeling. I was talking to a friend over the phone like a couple weeks ago, and she came to me. She's like, it's like she was ranting, but she was trying to figure something out. Mm-hmm. And she was talking. It goes back to the whole like people just want to be listened to.
Yes.
And in the beginning, I messed up by trying to guide her and to assume what she was feeling and why she was reacting to all these things. Mm-hmm. But she was like, no, and this, she kept saying no, and I was like, okay, maybe I should just stop suggesting and just listening to her. So I just started listening. I was like, well, why do you feel this way? Just ask questions to kind of make her talk more, less me, more her. And eventually, in the end of it, it was like a breakthrough. She was just like, well, I figured it out. Now I know why I act the way I act, and I know why I'm dragging my feet when it comes to my business sometimes. I was like, it's because of this. And I was like, whoa, okay. Like, I didn't have to do anything, but she loves me now. So that's a plus. But, like, it's interesting when you say that, because a lot of the things you're doing in your business, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. People just don't see that, and sometimes they want to be listened to, like you said in the beginning.
Right.
They're going through a hard time, they just want to be listened to. They don't know why they have everything. They don't know why they do the things they do or say yes to certain people.
Right.
But they want you to listen so you can help them figure it out. Sometimes they just need to talk it out.
And back to the book, like you said, I wanted to be heard. I didn't know that I was seeking something by writing all of those notes to myself, but I wanted people to receive what it was I was feeling and for people to support me. And through that process, I did figure out, who I am and what I want and how I wanted to grow. And it was just, how do you express it, right? How do you express it? And sometimes we're expressing it unconsciously by the things that we carry around, or sometimes we express it consciously by talking to a friend, but maybe they're not receiving it quite right. So we make, it's happening, it's just finding ways that we're able to get to that point of breakthrough, right?
I love that a lot. Looks like I need to use your services. But that's amazing, and I know we're running short on time, but I wanted to add one more thing. One last question, actually.
Yeah.
What advice would you give other women out there, or men? It could be, because this could, definitely men would love to hear this, I'm sure. What advice would you give them, basically to help them move forward and love themselves?
Yeah, the most important thing I think you can do is learn how to talk to yourself. Learn to give yourself a pep talk, whether that's written or in your mind, or making a recording on your phone of you saying, you can do this, you're strong, I love you, you can make it, and playing it back to yourself in the car obsessively. Whatever venue it is, you've got to master your inner voice, that voice in your head. Really spending some time to think about, what is it that I'm hearing in there, and what is it that I want to hear. One of the biggest changes for me since going through all this is that when I get really stressed and anxious, the record that starts playing, or the CD or MP3 or whatever we're calling it these days, the track that starts playing in my head is I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, over and over. It just starts playing. It's the auto play setting instead of, oh my gosh, you're failing, or oh, this is really bad. It just starts going, I love you, and I feel it, and I feel it start to radiate out of me, and it's such a powerful feeling. So any way you can start practicing that. It's not easy to get into your own head, so maybe writing things out or making that recording is the way to go to start. But eventually you do reach that sort of 10,000 hours of mastery where it just becomes a part of who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. No, it definitely helps you when times get tough.
Yeah. And
you remind yourself, who am I again?
Yes.
Why do I love myself? Okay, got it. And everything's good,
Yeah.
No, thank you so much, Danielle. And one last
thing.
Thank you, Hadeel. Where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me online. I have a website, Danielle-Watson.com. You can also find me on Instagram at _Danielle Daily.
All right, perfect. And she has the book,
Yes, Dear Self, I Love You, Keep Going. It's available on Amazon.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Danielle, for your time coming on here. I'm honored to be having you on this show, so thank you. Thank you again. Thank you.